This is the DIY Artist Route and You podcast, helping musicians and creative entrepreneurs navigate the uncommon path to success. Hi, I'm D. Grant Smith, syndicated host of the Appetizer radio show. I coach musicians and creative entrepreneurs in growth strategies for building stronger and supportive audience bases. I'm also a speaker and author. Today's podcast episode features a conversation with a fellow radio maven and indie music superfan, Justin Wayne. Justin has a very popular indie music podcast that is appropriately titled The Justin Wayne Show. He has a team of contributors who help him sort and discover great new music to feature. As a fellow radio host and music media professional, I wanted to bring Justin here to share some insights into what makes for great music submissions and get airplay, and his unique insights into why folks in our world of music media support the arts that we do through our respective media platforms. Justin lives up north where it is very cold, or at least it's very cold compared to where I live in Texas. This conversation took place on a January evening via the telephone after he finished doing some snowboarding classes. Yeah, that's right, he's cool literally and figuratively. Enjoy his insights and our later discussions into what it's like to have cats that literally work for you. Here we go.
So in 2007, she wasn't my wife at the time. She became my wife later, but we moved to London, England, and I was unemployed for a while, and I had this conversation on a chairlift with a friend of mine about podcasting, and I'd already loved, sort of music radio and programming my own stuff, and I spent a little bit of time also working for a classic rock station, and sort of got the other side of it. Saw the playlists that were sort of dictated by not even the company I worked for. They had bought these playlists, and so I would show up and put a couple of songs in. I like to play. I think I played Bohemian Rhapsody at the end of my classic rock shows back then. I sort of would sneak it in at the end. But it was eye-opening, and just seeing that the industry was moving away from taking care of these sort of emerging artists, and for all of us that like to listen to new music and are interested in what's new out there and what people are doing differently, I was concerned, and so that's sort of, I had all this time between looking for work and I started a podcast. I just started emailing people and asking them if I could use their music on a show, and it sort of started from there, and it was a hobby for a while, and then when I started talking to the Association of Music Podcasting, they were really interested in having me, become a part of it. When I did that, I really started to take it a lot more seriously, sort of in my second year. And that's kind of how I got started doing it. And it's funny, once you get the independent music bug, the sort of, people listen to the show and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so good. This is such good music. They don't really believe it. I think that there's a little bit of education that happens, and then once you get the bug, it's hard to let go.
Right on. Yeah, it's interesting that a lot of people still don't realize that you don't have to listen to the same boring 5 songs over and over and over again on the radio. You can diversify your stuff by listening to indie programming.
Absolutely. And people are hungry for it. People are interested, If they heard something that was up there, in their sort of something that they would like, and I try and, for my friends and stuff, I'm like, what are you listening to right now? Like, here, try this. And that's kind of a fun thing to do. And just, I think, like I said before, I think it comes down to us, presenters doing this sort of music podcasting and this independent stuff to educate the other people and say, hey, educate the audience and say, hey, there's great stuff out there to listen to, and you don't just have to troll on the radio because it's not going to be there.
Yeah, right on. Well, I'm curious about your methods. I think we all have our own interesting ways of how we decide what we're going to put on our shows and how we're going to orchestrate all that stuff. How do you go about deciding the music to put on your show?
So when I first started out, I was doing a lot of procurement, so I was spending a lot of time, listening to stuff. 2007 was still, MySpace was still around, like the old MySpace. And so I listened to a lot of stuff on MySpace. Facebook was finally starting to figure out music. You know, you'd see a couple of artists. I mean, now that's where most everyone is, and that's where I listen to some music as well. But over the years, we spent a lot of time marketing our sort of music submission page on our site. It's been picked up by things like the Indie. I know it's in the Indie Bible, and there's it's in a few other places. So people find us a lot of times now, and a lot of what we do is just go through submissions, which is great. I mean, having the new music come to us has been a great shift. There's some PR houses and stuff that'll send us things, and we have some relationships with them. Some of them that we like and that do good work. There are some PR houses that just take artists' money and they don't really do a great job. So we've found ones that we like, and so we'll take stuff from them. But what we try and do is really get the stuff that the new artists are setting themselves, that are taking a bit of time and being personal about it, and maybe have listened to our show before, or at least know kind of what we play. It's pretty obvious sometimes, some of those submissions, that they haven't listened to the show. They're BCC emailing a bunch of people, and it's almost like a lot of times. I mean, we try to respond to everyone that submits, but if you're not taking the time to at least check out the website for a brief moment to see might my music fit on this station, and it's not. It becomes a little bit not worth my time to respond to a BCC email that you've emailed to however many hundred of emails you found in the Indie Bible or wherever you might have found them. So that can be a little bit frustrating, but they stand out. I mean, it's actually, as we've gone through it, it's pretty easy now to sort of pick out the people that have spent a little bit. It doesn't take a ton of time, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So
I'm so glad that you said that, because that's something that I've been saying for a while, for artists to have an experience with a radio platform before they start contacting people. Leading into that, though, would you agree with me that when somebody contacts you and addresses you by name and talks about how they enjoy your program, does that kind of make you want to not only listen to their music, but kind of psychologically it makes you like them a little bit more than just somebody that, like you were saying, BCCs you amongst a bunch of other people?
I mean, first of all, spend time on your music and have good music. Because the thing is, no matter how much of a nice person, you as the musician, not you, D. Grant, but whoever the musician is, if your music isn't very good, if the recording isn't great, it's not going to matter how much of a nice person you are. And actually, that's not completely true. It really depends. Like, if you can make your music sound good as an acoustic song that you recorded, in your basement, on one microphone or something, if that sounds good, if you're writing good music, then we've played stuff like that. I mean, it really depends on the show again, but we've played, I've played stuff that someone recorded on a, cassette 4-track and then converted it to digital, just because it was a great song. So, I mean, I think, the music is in a lot of what, so Claire is my co-presenter or co-host, and she does a lot of goes through a lot of submissions as well. And sometimes we won't even look at the submission before we listen to the song. We'll just listen to it first. I mean, that's first things first. I think that's the most important. But, as you said, I think if it's going to stand out a little bit more if they've spent a little bit of time. And we explicitly tell people that on our website. We say, write something interesting that we might, radio guys love to talk about stuff that's different, or, we love our exclusives, but it's not even that. Like, it's just nice to have something to talk about. Like, oh, this band wrote this song. They're all living together in this house, and they wrote this song when they're having a party or something like that. Like, that sort of stuff is cool and interesting, and listeners like it because then listeners can tell their friends that. Like, there's this sort of, you got to let people in a little bit, and and share some of these things. because us radio guys love talking about stuff like that.
Right on. What's something that you see consistently from DIY independent musicians that are submitting stuff to you, or just what you're listening to? What do you see that you feel maybe hinders them from growing their music?
Like sometimes a band will, like everyone wants to record an album, right? Like I really want to record 10 songs that I've written or something, and I think that's a great thing to do at some point in your career. But if you're really trying to, and this goes back to just having a great recording of the song, because I totally understand. Like I've been a musician in my life. I know that something can sound great, in your basement when you're playing it, but it's a totally different story when all that I get to hear of you, your song, is whatever that recording is. So whether you spent, $1,000 on one demo recording, and you spend some time, rehashing the song, going over and making sure it's well written, and making sure it's well recorded, and like there are silly things like the drums are off, and that's one of the. I mean, it's a silly thing that bothers me, but like when the rhythm is off on your recording, like it's distracting.
That's not a silly thing, man. That's a big deal. That's like, a very big deal.
If it's distracting to me, it's going to be distracting to my listeners, and on and on. So for me personally, I'm trying to maintain a certain level of production. Obviously, there are genres that don't require that. That actually there are genres that sort of like post indie thing that happens sometimes where the singer isn't very good, and there's there are things that. There are certainly genres that accept that. And so, it depends on the show and your genre and you as an artist. So to go back to where I started, if you want to record an album, that's great. But what I would recommend doing is recording 2 or 3 or 4 songs that sound really good and focusing on those first. And then once you can break through and you can get some radio, you can get some podcast play and some radio play, so you're getting some feedback, then you can move on to those other things. I think I've also been a computer programmer in my life, and that one of those things that's another like computer programmer thing is you start small, you get something that you can deliver, and you can grow from there. So, and you figure out if it works. Like it's a great way. You make sure that these songs sound good, and you've written them well. And if you send them out to a bunch of people and they don't like it, then maybe you should go a different direction, or maybe you should just keep refining what you're trying to do. I would never tell someone to change their style or change what they were doing if they really felt passionate about that, because that's the most important thing in my mind. And that should come through in all of that, in the recording, in the stuff that your PR that you're writing. When you're building your team, make sure those people that are on your team, your PR people, your manager, or if it's just friends that are helping you out, make sure they understand your passion and what you're trying to do, because there's nothing more important, because you're trying to improve people's lives. I mean, that's really what a musician's job is, at the end of the day, is to relate to people and to let them know that they're not alone in the world. And, I'm sure every musician has their own goal, but, in a very broad sense, like that's your job. And so make sure that those people on your team are aware of what you're trying to do.
Right on. From what I've read on your website, turning the Justin Wayne Show into Maven.fm, will you tell us about that decision and when Maven will be up?
We've been working on it for a few years. Maven has been a pet project of ours for a little bit longer even than that, probably 3 years. When I did my master's degree in electronic publishing, that's what I focused on was music. And the landscape of internet radio and radio in cars and all this has been really interesting to watch, especially over the last 5 years. Or even if you go back further to like Napster and how Napster changed, Napster and iTunes completely changed the way music is purchased and music is listened to. So. But what we wanted to do and the Justin Wayne Show has been growing, and I would admit that the Justin Wayne Show is not a great title for for a music show. It was a joke back, 7 years ago, and it sort of stuck. So there are other things that I want to do with shows and, different specific genres I'd like to focus on. And I also have a bunch of friends, like people that are in the Association of Music Podcasting or some of my other, I know that they're DJs or in England they call them music presenters that feel really jaded by the current, what's going on. And I think, in the UK there's a couple other outlets that they have. There's so many music podcasters that are sort of like, well, I was a DJ for a while and it was awful because I couldn't pick any of my music. And, people that want to research and pick music, I think are gems and are important to this sort of young music industry that we're a part of, the sort of independent music and the DIY area. And so that's kind of what I want to do and focus on. And you may have read about this sort of recent, they had this exception for small internet or small webcasters that is gone. And so like Live 365 had to close up, basically close up shop. I think there's there's a couple guys left that are kind of waiting to see if things will change. But with the relationships that we've had with our artists, we should be able to, and we still have to like deal with the rest of the legal stuff. But I'm hoping that with our direct, with artists saying, yeah, play our music, here's permission, we'll be able to sort of get around that part of it and hopefully build not only a radio station that will be able to sustain us as presenters, but we want to also build something in that we could start paying back these musicians directly for letting us use their music, because obviously music podcasting and music, internet music radio would be nothing without the songs you guys are writing and creating and sending to us. So.
Right on. One question a little off of the beaten path, something else I saw on your website, and you and I have a similarity in this way. You have a cat who also serves as your producer, and I do as well. Mine's sitting here next to me. Tell us a little bit about Puck and what responsibilities is Puck a he or a she?
He's a he. Have you not heard him? He's been chasing me around. It must be about time for dinner. No, Puck has been he's been a great companion. I don't know why he sort of adopted me. Well, a friend of ours had too many animals, and so we ended up with Puck, and he's I know, you want to be on the show, don't you? Come here. Can you hear him? He's howling at me.
No, I can't.
He's deaf too, so he's the perfect music podcast cat because he can't hear anything. But he definitely makes himself known.
That's awesome.
But he's been a good friend. He's been when I do a lot of work at home and stuff too. He's been great.
That's awesome. I saw some of the stuff you and your co-host were posting about your favorite picks for bands and records from 2015. I'm curious what your top, if you could think off the top of your head, what your top 5 might be.
Let's see. I mean, we've always been a big fan of Tom Rosenthal. Didn't really put out. He did actually put out an album this year, so that would be Tom Rosenthal. He's not the comedian. There's a British comedian called Tom Rosenthal, and then he's also a Brit, but he's a musician. So I think it's kind of confusing.
Oh.
But yeah, Tom's pretty fantastic. There's a band, I believe they're out of Ohio, called The Great Secret. They had a really good single out this year that we played. I don't know if we've done, every once in a while we do a rewind. Whenever the song is so good, we have to play it a second time right away. And we end up doing, we don't do one very often, maybe 1 or 2 a year, and that was definitely one of them that we did. What else? Pulling up my, I've been building a list. I'm going to cheat and pull it up on my computer here. And I've been using iTunes for a long time to create my playlist.
Yep, that's what I do too.
Yeah. A guy out of Seattle called Kai Alfred Hillig. He did a really interesting, super raw album last year called The Buddhist. Some really interesting songs in there about really just honest songs about his life. That was an interesting thing that happened this year. Another band called Grown Up Avenger Stuff. They've got a great album called Sparkleton that's out.
Cool.
Another great Dancing Ears is a band out of the UK that Claire discovered at some point. I think they were involved with a couple of different live nights, and they played one of those, and they had a song that we really enjoyed last year, and then they just put out a song in December called Learn to Kiss, which is a great single as well. There's tons of great stuff. I mean, it's hard sometimes to pick our favorites. I mean, I think, it just depends on the day sometimes with the stuff that we're listening to, but My Baby is another one. They're almost not independent anymore. I think they're definitely destined for great things. They toured with C6 Steve last year, which was pretty sweet. And
Cool.
C6 Steve was all about them and brought them on stage and did all sorts of stuff with them. I don't know. I could do this all day. So
No, that's really cool, man.
I don't know. I'm sure you know this as well. There's sort of a religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do you believe in independent music? Do you believe that it's good? Yeah, I do. Okay, here you go. I don't know. It's like, have you taken independent music as your personal savior? It's sort of a, I don't know. Like, that's probably not appropriate to say, but.
No, I'm gonna quote you on that one. That's awesome.
But it's sort of like that. I mean, I think people there's certain people that just don't get it. They just don't believe that it's any good, and a big part of it's because they haven't experienced it. So. Once they experience it, they're like, "Oh yeah, this is great. Why would I want to listen to the radio anymore?" And I still listen to the radio. Like, there's still stuff on the radio that I like. My dad likes to point it out to me once in a while. He's like, "You'd like this." And I do.
Well, I hope we are on the radio, so I hope I hope that we haven't lost our evangelical power to bring you to some sort of radio happiness. If I can play on that metaphor in a better way.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Justin, thank you so much for being with us on this podcast. Man, this has been great. Appreciate you.
Yeah, we appreciate you too. Thanks for doing what you do.
Justin Wayne, founder and host of The Justin Wayne Show, an indie music media platform that showcases DIY, indie, and unsigned bands regularly on both their podcast and their blog. Get more information and submit music at thejustinwayneshow.com. Following and sharing this podcast is easier than ever, mostly because I keep putting it on every platform where DIY artists are. New and archived episodes are available on iTunes, Podbean, Spreaker, as well as my website, dgrantsmith.com. Spread this love with your fellow musicians and music community members to help them grow. Okay, aside from The Justin Wayne Show and the Appetizer Radio Show, there are tons of great radio platforms for indie and DIY artists like you to get heard on. I have the ultimate help for you to make that happen on the Indie Radio course. Discover a proven method to not only get your music on the radio and build solid connections with media mavens, radio stations, and music influencers. All of that is at dgrantsmith.com/indie radio course. Once again, dgrantsmith.com/indie radio course. I also have some free guides and full archive of episodes for this podcast, and a sign up for you to get the DIY Musicians Radio Handbook right now at dgrantsmith.com. Okay, one more thing. You rule. That's right, you are awesome because you just gave me 25 minutes or more of your day, and that means the world to me. Thank you. Let's keep this conversation going by sharing this podcast and you messaging me for more conversation. I'm on Twitter at Appetizer Radio, Facebook at the D Grant Smith, and straight up email details are at dgrantsmith.com. Wow, I just said my name like a billion times. I want to know what your name is and learn more about your music or your entrepreneur endeavor. So hit me up. Until then, have a great day, and I'll see you soon.